welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
This is Jessica with Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast, and I am here today with an author whose book, My Sweet Girl, was on fire last year, and I was so sorry that I missed a chance to actually interview her because I got my ARC way after interviews were happening, and now I actually get to do this for the book You're Invited. So why don't you tell our audience who you are and tell them about You're Invited?
Sure. First of all, Jessica, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you. This is just such an exciting time all around. Everything feels like such a whirlwind. I am so excited that You're Invited is out in the world today. It is about a woman who finds out that her ex-best friend, whom she hasn't spoken to in 5 years, is now marrying her ex-boyfriend. So understandably, she's feeling all the feelings, and the most prevalent of these feelings being that she has to stop this wedding from taking place, no matter what the cost. And so she flies back to Sri Lanka, to her hometown in Colombo, where this large, extravagant, over-the-top wedding is taking place, and sets about on this plan to sabotage the wedding. Of course, then the bride goes missing, is presumed dead, and Amaya, that's the name of the main character, has to prove her innocence. Now, whether or not she's innocent or how innocent she is, that's totally up to you to decide. But she's got to prove or convince the investigators that she has nothing to do with this or risk being arrested.
So first of all, tell me about Colombo 7, because I started reading about it after, I'm reading the book, and, I'm looking up the areas, and I'm like, okay, well, Colombo 7. And I looked that up because they keep talking about it. And I see that it's an area called Cinnamon Gardens.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So it's very much the affluent part of Colombo. Colombo is a really interesting place. It's very much, you'll be going down a street, and it would be beautiful big houses, these mansions, everything looking perfect. And then you turn a corner and see something very, very different, like absolutely the opposite. So it's, you get these little pockets, and there's almost these little micro communities. And definitely the Colombo 7 community, it's less of a thing now. I think there used to be a time where everyone who lived in Colombo 7, you could only live in Colombo 7 if you were very, very wealthy. It's changing up a little bit now, but still very much, it's a prestige thing. And so it's very much a little bubble of 1%ers. I would say even less than 1% of the country live like that. And, it's very much their own world. Someone else I was chatting to recently compared it to, they're like, oh, is it like Beverly Hills? Is sort of that what it's like? And yes, but in a much smaller scale, because obviously we're a very small country and a very small society as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that myself, but then I was also thinking, to kind of set that against, it's not exact. It's the idea of this really exclusive bubble is probably the same, but then just sort of reading the book and just sort of starting to, research and just get the feels of the area. It seems like you were saying, just on a much smaller scale of extravagance. Of course, Cinnamon Gardens sounds like a magical place.
It's not a name. It honestly, a lot of names from a lot of names in Colombo kind of just draw on what things literally were back in the day. So it was literally like a cinnamon plantation, I guess, back at the time.
But okay, well, that puts a different spin on it.
Well, whoever owned cinnamon plantations were incredibly wealthy, because still those who actually own it or export cinnamon, for example, tend to do quite well for themselves because it is a very, very expensive spice. And especially the time of colonialism, it was very much a marker of wealth and your socio-economic class to be an owner of such a sort of plot of land or whatever.
It's definitely prettier. For instance, like in Brooklyn, we have Dumbo, which
Yes.
has nothing.
I was in New York. Yeah,
It has
amazing.
nothing to do with elephants. It means down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass. So yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay, good to know.
So let's get back to the book though. So Amaya, so she went to school. She grew up in Sri Lanka, and Kavi was her best friend, and they were like so close. Amaya had like a complicated family life. She had a white British dad who seems to, like fall in love with her mother, and then suddenly just decided, you know what, this is too much trouble and too much work, and I'm just going to go. And her mother, had understandably problems, and like there was some mental health stuff. Amaya was raised by her, I guess like her housekeeper, sort of. But she and Kavi's family, who it was like there was like a family that owned like a gem mine. Very close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, that's pretty much it. They were like sisters, close. And there's just this like discrepancy though between when you're listening to everybody sort of being interviewed, with what Kavi is saying, and then what other people are saying about the relationship. And it's really good because you're kind of wondering who the unreliable narrator actually is. And I loved that about this book.
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly kind of what I was going for. I really wanted to set up a scenario where perhaps not everybody's being honest. Everybody's got something to hide. Everybody's got an axe to grind almost with Kavi and her family. And then there's also what you portray to the outside world versus what you really feel. And I think that sort of comes through in the interviews, and that also comes through sort of Kavi's social media presence as well, because she's all about that image that she presents to society and what actually happens behind the scenes. There's definitely a discrepancy there.
Yeah, she's like an influencer, and it's like she does charity, and so she wants to kind of set herself apart from her family, but she can't really separate herself from the name of her family. It's like she does some things that are good, but then at the same time the two sort of feed each other. And then there's this relationship with Spencer, who Amaya was dating in college, and how that happened and unfolds throughout the story. And it's just, I'm afraid, like, if I say anything else from this point on, I'm going to start spilling some spoilers. And I do not want to do that. It was a really good, like, I've been reading, some of these wedding thrillers, wedding suspense thrillers, and I think that this one is like top shelf. To use I guess a metaphor. It really is. It's got a lot of things in it that will kind of keep you going. I loved the characters. I loved the different aunties.
They were my favorite one.
Yes, who have their opinions about things, and sometimes what you think their opinion is going to be is not. It was just a really good, twisty beach read, and I liked it. So this is different from My Sweet Girl in many, many ways. Did you know that this was where you were going after you wrote My Sweet Girl?
Well, I knew that I wanted to write something that was taking place at one of these over-the-top Sri Lankan weddings. I got the idea for it when I was kind of at a wedding myself, saw a few cracks in this perfect facade. I thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to throw a dead body into the mix and kind of see what unfolds? Um, so I definitely knew that I wanted to set it at a wedding. With my sweet girl, the main character's voice was very, very distinct. And a big worry that I had was that there would be some spillover into this story. So something that I took a lot of care about before I started writing was to really sort of get to know my characters, especially Amaya. I really wanted her to be a, a specific kind of person, but also, how do I put this? It's when you're writing someone, you want to, for me at least, the process is more like I'm getting to know them. And I try not to control it too much. It's more like, oh, okay, this makes sense for her as a person. And then how does she go about solving that? How does she handle the situation based on who she is as a person? So I just spend a little bit of time sort of journaling from her perspective and doing things like that to make sure that I had a good handle on her voice. Yeah, and another element, I guess, that made its way into the stories is an idea that I'd been thinking about for a while, was this concept of female friendships and female friendship breakups. Because I feel that in the world today, we give a lot of space for the idea of romantic breakups, right? It's completely acceptable for us to sit on the couch, put on, some romantic movie or listen to Celine Dion or whatever and eat a pint of ice cream and have our girlfriends rally around us and tell us it's going to be okay and that you can do much better than that loser. And, there is this scenario that's completely acceptable and a grieving process, which is really important for romantic relationships. But there really isn't anything like that for female female friendship breakups or friendship breakups in general. You're just supposed to move on with your life, even though, this person has been such an important part of who you are. I mean, in Amaya's and Kavi's case, they grew up together. They were best friends. Amaya really sees Kavi's family as her own. And it was almost like she wasn't able to grieve that. And because she never had an outlet, instead what she would do is she would do, I think, what a lot of us do, whether we like to admit it or not, especially for people that who are in our past, who we've let go, is just kind of doing this peeping through windows thing through social media, where she's just keeping track of her. She's not, actively reaching out. She's not doing something, but she's just keeping tabs on her friend. They had this falling out. They've said and done maybe horrible things to each other. There's a lot of history there, but she's still keeping an eye on her friend. And as the book goes on, you will maybe understand why. And I hope readers do understand why. Because I think this is something that happens to all of us. We lose touch with friends. Sometimes they're not as dramatic as what happened between Amaya and Kavi. I mean, I hope not. But sometimes friends drift apart, and it's very, very sad. And I wanted to be able to explore that a little in this story.
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it. And I do think we need to kind of spend more time realizing what the loss of a friendship could be. And in a way, it is, almost like a bigger loss than, I don't want to say it's a bigger loss than loss of a partner, a romantic partner, but it's definitely a different hole that it leaves. Because like you were saying, your friends are the ones who are supposed to help you pick up the pieces. But when the person who's supposed to help you pick up the pieces is gone, and then in this case, the person who's supposed to help you pick up the pieces is like marrying that loser who you could do better than. It's really just destructive. And I just really liked just the different voices, and you really aren't sure what the cause of their friendship breakup was until you really get there. And I was definitely surprised how their stories sort of unfolded. But like what I wanted to also talk about was you also have the relationship between Amaya and her sister. She has two sisters. One is very, very young. And then there is Tahini. And that was a really interesting relationship too.
Yeah, I think sibling rivalry is an interesting thing. I don't have sisters myself. I have a younger brother, and I think when you have that older sister younger brother dynamic is very, very different from when you have sort of sisters who are perhaps closer in age and tend to be competitive with each other. It's not all sisters, but I've definitely in my I remember when I was in school, there were these sisters who were like that, where one was very clearly overshadowed by the other, and there was definitely that inferiority complex playing in and like impacting decision making. And I've always thought that that was something, again, just when you're writing a book, and especially when you're writing a thriller, you don't want to get too heavy handed on sort of those, issues. But at the same time, it's a really fun space to kind of explore these observations that you might have had in the past. So for me, that's really what that is, I've noticed something maybe sometimes like years ago, and I think it's a fun idea to play around with. And that's essentially what I was doing with Tahani's and Kavi's relationship.
So Spencer is interesting. When you sort of conceived of this story, did the because you say you get to know your characters, did they inform you of what was really happening and what had happened to cause his breakup with Amaya, or did you know where it was going or where it had been immediately? Because I did.
I definitely knew what happened between Amaya and Spencer. I definitely knew that there was something that happened, something big that had to have happened that really rocked the foundation of her friendship with Kavi, and that it couldn't have been your typical, disagreement over whatever it is that it could have been at the time. I did also know what the big twist, or like what the big reveal was going to be, and everything else kind of works its way out or around as I keep writing. I try not to. I usually have the big beats mapped out, so that I know what goal I am writing towards. But especially when you throw characters together in more tense sort of scenarios, especially in the present day timelines, it's like how they're reacting to each other, how Amaya reacts when she sees Spencer for the first time in so many years, how she sees Kavi, how she feels when she sees Kavi for the first time in so many years. All of those things are things that happen as I'm writing. Those reactions especially, I feel that if I try to map those out too much, it just doesn't come across as particularly authentic.
Well, like I said, I'm really getting to a point where any other questions I want to ask are going to spoil the story. So I have to stop asking questions and really just ask listeners to read this book, please. It is so good. Oh, so good.
Thank you, Jessica.
Very different than My Sweet Girl, other than the fact that it does center around a friend. Well, My Sweet Girl didn't really center around a friendship, but the friendship was a central part of the plot, a then and now friendship. Although really the stories could not be any different. Other than the fact that the main characters were Sri Lankan. Amaya was extremely different from Paloma. I did not feel like I was reading the same character. and that book was really, really great. So if you have not read My Sweet Girl, do it, but definitely read You're Invited.
Oh, thank you, Jessica. You did such a great job, like walking around the potential spoilers. I am so
hard.
nervous.
I am having such a hard time. I'm like leading up to it, and then I'm like, can't ask that.
No, I am so bad. I am always so nervous that I will say something. I have this big foot and mouth problem where I'm saying things that are like, oh no, 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 why did I just do that? Yeah, but you did such a good job of talking so much about the book without really revealing anything. Fantastic. Wow, I wish I had your skills.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. And I wish I had your writing skills because, but as a librarian, the good thing is that, we get to read these books and then we get to tell people about them and, share them. And like I said, when your name came up on the interview roster, that was like, absolutely, I will wade through like an ocean to get to interview her.
You're fine. Thank you.
So are you writing something for next year, or are you taking a bit of a break?
I am working on the next book. I'm unfortunately not at liberty to talk too much about it because it's not been announced yet. But yeah, I am writing something right now. I am super excited about it. I can't talk too much about it, but it's definitely still in sort of this thriller suspense vein. And I am excited to continue to share parts of my culture and my country with readers.
So, you know what, before we go, how about if readers are going to visit Sri Lanka, are there some hidden gems that you would recommend? Some places that you would be like, this needs to be on your list?
Oh, wow. That's so difficult to answer because Sri Lanka is absolutely beautiful. It's a fantastic holiday destination. The beauty of Sri Lanka, I think, lies in the fact that you could have such a variety of experiences in a very small space. So we have the sort of the mountainous regions in the middle of the country, which is, like the hills, and it's really beautiful, the waterfalls, and it's a completely different environment. And then, you travel just a few hours away and you're at this absolutely stunning beach. There are rainforests and like the safaris are fantastic. There's just so much to do here. And it's a really remarkable, very, very special place. My real tip, if you do ever visit, is to just any chance you get, eat the local cuisine, because nothing beats a good plate of Sri Lankan rice and curry. Like, I'm such a Sri Lankan girl at heart. If I go like more than a day or two without eating some rice and curry, I get really, really grumpy. So it's a really great place to come on a holiday. It's a really good place to put on a few pounds, to be honest. It's a really lovely place. I really encourage anyone to visit if you ever get the chance. And if you ever get the chance, try to see if you can attend a Sri Lankan wedding, because they really are incomparable.
Thank you so much. So once again, this is Jessica with Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. Our guest today was
Amanda Jayatissa. Yay.
And we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.